basically is a culmination of all these states that are united yet divided. Each state has its own sovereignty, right? So therefore, we're arguing today about the federal government, and it's exceeding its authority to exert federal law over state law. That this health care bill is a violation of the Constitution, because what they're deriving that from is the Commerce Clause. If you really look into the Commerce Clause of the Constitution, it is really for the president to use his military powers to prevent enemies from impeding trade. So the idea of the Commerce Clause was to facilitate trade, not to regulate or mandate, is what they're doing with the health care plan.
And as far as regulating and mandating, take a look at some of the provisions in the cap and trade bill that say if it goes, it's already passed the House, if it goes through the Senate, you will be allowed to sell your home, period, without having it inspected and some bureaucrat saying, okay, it is energy efficient enough, or you have to retrofit it and bring it up to the standards that they can increase each and every year. That's not the America I grew up in, where I've got to go ask some bureaucrat in an office downtown if it's okay if I sell my house, and then I have to pay to have it inspected and put the inspection seal on my wall in a public, easily observable place. We have a government that has just run amok. That they've just. I remember when I was a kid, we used to watch the cowboy movies, and they'd say when a horse gets the bit in his teeth, which means he clamps down on it and you can no longer steer the horse or slow him up, and he grabs the bit in his teeth and just runs wherever he wants to go, as long as he wants to run and as fast as he wants to run. That's what our government's doing now, and they're running the rest of us right toward a cliff. So, we need, as Dale said, to take our country back to the principles upon which it was founded. How do you feel about that, Brian?
What is your... Well, he was just saying that we need to get back to, like you were talking about, the computers are breaking down, and our cars are not lasting as long as they could last. What happens, you've got, I call it special interests. You've got these entities of corporations, and I'm not an opponent of corporations. I believe the free market forces is a way to go, where basically you come up with an idea of providing a product or service to me, and because there's a need there, right? And so therefore you provide that product or service. What we have a monopoly going on in our country that, let's just say you've got, GM or Ford. Well, there's no real competition, so I'll just design the car that will fail after a couple of years. And so what they're doing, they're churning the economy to line their pockets. And we would have a problem, wouldn't have a problem with that if there was true competition. If you didn't have the government and business shoring up these companies, just like the banking industry, when they do perform poorly, that they don't have to worry about failure because the government's going to protect them. And so they're too big to fail is what their term they use. And so what we have these illegitimate corporations, right, who are using the government because they have their own agenda to destroy us economically. And so therefore they're willing to expand government, right, in order to ensure they have a permanence in our society. In reality, they probably would have died and gone away because they can't be competitive. And what we need to do is look, we're tired of this monopoly, these manufactured crises is really what it comes down to. If you unleash the potential of the American people, the problems that you're having with laptops wouldn't exist, because somebody would design a laptop and say, look, this is the most rugged laptop. I've ran it for 100 million hours, and it's never failed. And you would be able to promote that to the public. But you don't get that because you've got companies who have the power to provide a product that fails all the time.
Well, one of our problems is that over the past few years, a third of our manufacturing has gone overseas. And why is that? Because of our corporate tax structure. We have some of the highest corporate taxes in the entire world. So a smart manufacturer says, well, okay, I can set up my plant here in the United States, and number one, I'm going to pay higher wages, but number two, the taxes are going to absolutely butcher me, or I can go elsewhere and set up a manufacturing plant, and I won't pay nearly as much taxes and couple that with lower wages. Ford, as Dale mentioned, has 5 divisions. They're all making money except one. Which one is that? The one based in the United States. All of Ford's 4 foreign-based companies are profiting, but not the one here in the United States. That's the only one that's losing money. So again, it's our politicians being overly greedy and overtaxing, wanting possession of all of our income streams and our right to make decisions for ourselves. So once again, if government would get out of the way and let the private market take care of itself and cut if they cut the corporate taxes back, there's so much offshore money that would come back into the United States that would set up manufacturing plants and other businesses here. It would be a tremendous boon to the government, for one, and also a gigantic pill to cure this unemployment problem that we face, because there would be a plethora of jobs everywhere if the money that's hiding offshore due to our tax structures were brought back to this country. So that's something else you need to consider, Brian.
All right. I got 2 more questions I'd like to ask.
Okay, go ahead, shoot.
The first one is, would you consider the North American Union trade agreement or merging Canada and Mexico without the approval of the Senate and the people to be treason?
Yes. I mean, this is well, it's not a democracy, it's a republic. But no, if just our leaders, Hillary Clinton, who is our Secretary of State, were to sign a treaty with Canada and Mexico without running it through the Senate. It's required to be run through the Senate, by the way, which is the only reason we still have a Second Amendment and that a few other things haven't happened. But no, if they tried to slam that through without Senate approval, yeah, that's violation of the law, and it just absolutely should not be done.
Well, and just before I was talking about the Commerce Clause was to facilitate trade. And he said, well, they're facilitating trade. Yes, but at the detriment of the American citizen. When you're talking about losing jobs, right, to your fellow Americans, and you're eroding this country, and you're giving outside sources like China, for example, or Mexico, or Canada, an opportunity to compete here in our market without the same rules, right? See, we have regulations and rules that our corporations have to follow, right? However, if I do business where I send my corporation overseas to China, I don't have those rules or stipulations. I don't have to pay a minimum wage, right? And so that's what Dave is talking about. That is unconstitutional because it puts the American citizen at an unfair disadvantage. It's really eroding our wealth as a nation. So it's not in the best interest of our nation. So when they're enacting things like that it really puts us as a nation at a disadvantage, then it's unconstitutional. You've exceeded your powers that's supposed to be granted to you by the Commerce Clause.
Just a quick example of that would be if you look at farm-raised fish. I don't care, say catfish. If you go to the market and check, find out where it comes from. If it's U.S. farm-raised, it's going to be about $1 to $1.50 more per pound than if it's farm-raised somewhere else. Why? Because somewhere else, their health standards are not nearly what they are here. So they raise these fish jammed into very small areas, fairly well polluted, and to keep the fish from getting sick and dying, they feed them antibiotics. So you're getting these antibiotics from these fish raised in polluted waters that would not be allowed here in the United States. True, it's $1.50 a pound less, but for me, I'll pass on the fish raised in polluted waters, sewage, and fed antibiotics to keep them from dying. I'll pay the extra $1.50 and get American raised. But that applies to each and everything that's manufactured or raised. If it comes from a foreign country, it's not under the close scrutiny that it is here.
So, Brian, what's your other question?
Okay, cool. What are your views on the Federal Reserve?
David?
Okay. Well, the Federal Reserve has basically 3 ways of controlling our economy. One, the interest rates. 3 ways that they control the interest rates. One is by buying and selling Treasury securities. When they buy back Treasury securities, they're sucking money out of the private sector. There's less money to lend, so interest rates go up. I would got that backwards. When they buy them back, they're putting